On my channel, I often talk about the process for creating dungeons, as well as using inspiration from real life and so forth to get ideas for your dungeon. And I thought I need to find a way to show how that process is implemented. Recently, I saw Frankenstein on Netflix and was inspired by that. I thought this would make a great D&D adventure. Now, many other people have done this and so forth, but what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to actually create a one-shot adventure from start to finish using the movie Frankenstein as inspiration. I go through a 7-step process, and then at the end, I will take my finished module or adventure that I create, and I will make it available as a download for free from my website. So I'll put the link in the description at the end of this process. So let's get started. To begin the adventure creation, we start at the highest level. And what I like to do is start at the theme. So for example, in this 7-step process, the first one is choose an adventure theme, and then I will go through each step thereafter. So let's start with step 1. First one is choose an adventure theme, and there are 10 options. I believe I took these out of Old School Essentials Advanced Fantasy Referee's Tome, and I've chosen number 6, performing a quest. The others, banishing an ancient evil, clearing ruins, and so forth, don't really apply. So in this case, I've gone with this concept. The king hires the party to find a flesh golem that fled the kingdom after nearly killing the young prince. The golem found a small village in a remote mountain valley occupied by a dozen blind goblins and their seeing eye goats. The party follows clues and locates the village, and after confirming the presence of the golem and the blind goblins, they then decide what to do. So that's kind of the overall theme of the adventure, and it's essentially a quest. The king gave them a quest, so it's pretty classic. Step 2 of the 7-step process is choose a setting. This is basically what world does it exist in, and you kind of have 2 choices. You can choose an existing world, such as Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms and so forth, or you can roll your own. If you already have a campaign setting at your table, go for it and use that. Just pick a location on the map or create a new one if it doesn't already exist. Since I'm doing Frankenstein, I wanted to go with some place that has a feel like Switzerland. So we're talking high mountains, beautiful valleys, rugged river valleys, and such. So I chose Perrinland from the world of Greyhawk. Now, I've listed 3 tools that you can use to explore Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, and see what those are like. And you can see the web addresses here. I'll include those in the description. But because Perrinland seems to have a Swiss sort of feel to it, it's a little bit more of a northern latitude, and there's a lot of mountains, especially on the western edge of the kingdom. That's what I went with. But you can use pretty much whatever you wish for your adventure. Step 3 is choose your main monsters and your NPCs. I'm not talking about the individual orcs and kobolds and whatnot, but this is the higher level stuff, like your big bad evil guy or girl. Maybe they're minions, maybe a type of monster. For example, against the giants is all about hill giants and frost giants and fire giants. So in this case, my main monster is the flesh golem. It's a creature, and that's kind of the key point of this adventure. And then I decided on the 12 blind goblins and their 12 seeing eye goats. And then I am going to introduce a scenario where there are actually 2 werebores. One enters the village, and the golem comes out and attacks it and defends the goblins. And hopefully this is occurring in a way where the party can witness this. And so they can see that the golem is actually cooperating with the goblins and defending them. And then there's a second werebore that enters the scene, and the party has the decision of whether or not they want to intervene by attacking the werebore directly. They want to assist the golem when it attacks and defends the village against the werebore, or they just witness the whole thing and just watch it unfold and so forth. They can make those choices. So again, this is a part in the adventure where the party has some choices. And then, of course, we've got the king. We have to define what the king's name is, what they look like, how they behave. So make those kinds of notes. And then they interact with the captain of the guard. So that person probably would want a name, maybe a brief description of what they look like, but you don't need stats and that level of detail for these particular NPCs. But in your adventure, if you have NPCs, especially those that go along with the party, maybe cooperate in adventuring, you absolutely want to create those stats. So I've listed some tools that you can use to quickly generate character sheets that can have the stats that you're looking for. This is a very quick and easy way to generate NPC stats and character sheets when you need those. Otherwise, just make a few notes about their name, brief description of their personality and their appearance. Step 4, define your key locations. This is where the starting point of the adventure takes place. This is where they travel through on their way to the destination, and then you describe the destination itself. In this case, I've got the village Grimtal, which is a word that means Grim Valley. That's the name of this abandoned village where the goblins have set up shop and the golem has fled to. This village is up at the headwaters of the River Kragan. It's up inside of a remote, rugged mountain valley, kind of at a dead end in a sense, and it's just beyond the border of the kingdom of Perrinland. The adventure begins in the capital, the Schwarzenbrunn, which is the capital of Perrinland. And I took that name directly from the map, World of Greyhawk. So that's really all I need to define. If you want to stretch this out, you can include a couple of other villages or maybe some other natural landmarks, rivers, named places along the way. But really, this is just kind of, you want to understand the high level of where stuff takes place. Step 5, draw your maps. This is where there's a lot of fun to be had if you're a DM and you like to prep. This is where you draw your exterior maps, wilderness, cities, towns, villages, what have you, and where stuff is located. And it's also where you draw the interior of buildings. You can draw the floor plan of taverns if that matters, and you can draw the interior of your dungeon. In this case, I used a couple of different tools. I used the village generator to generate a random village, and you can see the image here. Go to that website, explore around, right-click the image, and then change your tags and layers to customize it, and just generate until you get something that you enjoy and meets your needs. That's exactly what I've done here. And then I use the one-page dungeon generator to do the same thing. You right-click the image, you change your options until you get something that looks like it's what you want. And in this particular dungeon, I've got the main common building in the village has a set of cellars directly underneath it, and that's really the only underground locations in this adventure. So I needed something simple, something straightforward, and this is what I created. So I numbered the rooms, and then I'm going to use those numbers in my key, which is the next step, when I stock my dungeon to indicate what is in each room. But I highly recommend you check out those particular dungeon generators and village generators. And then if you really want to draw it yourself, you absolutely can. Old school, you can use graph paper and pencil, or you can use some online tools like Dungeon Scroll or HexTML and draw them digitally. It's entirely up to you. This is for your internal notes. If you do want to generate handouts that you give to the players, you can also use these tools to generate that and kind of scrub them of a little detail entirely based on your needs. But these tools are a way to generate something very quickly, and it looks really cool. Step 6 is stock your dungeons. This is probably the step of the 7-step process that takes the most time. You can go as detailed as you wish. My recommendation is to do 2 things. Make quick notes of each room in each key location, of what is contained within that location, and any key constraints or requirements. Do they have to enter the room in a certain manner? Are there any magic effects going on? Are there any monsters inside? Are there any treasures inside? And then what I do is I make notes where I put anything that I'm going to read aloud to the players, I put it in a box. So in my notes that I print out, the read aloud text is always within a box. And this is especially important if you're ever going to give your adventure to someone else or if you're going to sell it. Any internal notes that are just for you are not in a box. So in this case, it says this room was essentially a large pantry where the villagers kept stores of canned goods and so forth. That's where I might include details about treasure, quick notes about monsters, secret doors, these kinds of things that only the dungeon master knows and then can choose during gameplay what you reveal, but anything that's read aloud is in the box. And that helps you at the gaming table quickly tell what you need to share and what you don't. Remember, this information is for you, the DM. So look for how you want to use this information at the table. If you need just a few quick brief notes just to jog your memory, that's all you need. If you want something a little bit more detailed where you're really needing to get detailed information, be a little bit more verbose in your notes. But again, you are the consumer of this information. So compose and format this based on how you want to consume it. The final step, finalize your notes and handouts, step 7, is really only important if you are going to give this adventure to others, to share it, to sell it, and so forth. This is where you are going to compose your introduction of what the adventure is about, any background information that you as a dungeon master need to get oriented to what's going on, what the key objectives are, and whatnot. It also describes anything about the game. For example, if you want this adventure to be used with a specific edition of D&D or a third-party product like Shadow Dark or Daggerheart Old School Essentials, you can include that information. The description is where you, again, this is for your internal consumption. This gets you oriented to what's going on. The background is what you're going to read aloud to the players. This is often at the beginning of the session where you tell the players, this is what's been going on, this is what you are experiencing, and this is the quest that you're going to go on, or whatever the case may be. At the end of your document is your appendix or appendices, and this is where you can include monster stats. I like to make sure that they are on a printable sheet, so all the monsters are on a single sheet or multiple sheets of paper in easily recognizable stats or stat blocks. I like to use the same format that I might find in a monster manual so that it's familiar. And this is also where you include NPC stats. If you have NPCs that need a full suite of stats, you would essentially include their character sheets here. And finally, if there are any key treasures, if you have detail about magic items, for example, that are custom, and you need to have information about how that magic item works, how many charges it has, what its stats are, that's where you can include that here. Sometimes, like for example, if a party finds a treasure chest and it's got a suite of contents, I will sometimes include a handout that I can give them and say, here's what's in that chest. It all depends on what your needs are. And then finally, this is where I include all the maps so that they're at the very end of the document. When I print out the adventure, they are all on their own sheet individually, and they're not mixed in to the body of the printout. So if I've got 18 pages of adventure module, I'm not having to flip around to the center of it to find a map. They're all at the back. And a lot of times I'll leave those separate behind my Dungeon Master screen so that I can look at them on a constant basis. And sometimes I'll even put them in the sleeve inside of my Dungeon Master screen so that I can see them at all times. But that's what you include in step 7. As you go through this video and watch the 7 steps of adventure creation, obviously you're going to recognize that the level of scope that I've covered here is really just for a brief one-shot. If you're designing an entire campaign, some of these steps are going to take quite a lot more time. For example, your overall planning of what the main object of the adventure is. And if you have multiple locations, you've got a temple here, a dungeon there, a town here, and so forth, you're going to have to spend a lot more time stalking each location and identifying their maps, drawing their maps, figuring out what's in each room, defining NPCs. But that's a lot of fun. It just depends on how complex and how big of a scale your adventure is. And then it's also up to you. Really, there is no right or wrong way to do this. This is all what you are going to use at the gaming table. So produce what you need. You as the Dungeon Master, produce what you need at the table. Organize it in the format that makes the most sense to you. If you buy adventure modules from, for example, myself or other publishers, You'll notice that they are in a somewhat consistent format and layout, but there's absolutely no reason why you have to do that the same way, especially if it doesn't make sense for you. Organize it and include the amount of detail that you need at the gaming table. If you're going to publish an adventure module, that's kind of a different topic. But again, look at what people are familiar with. And I would recommend kind of going with that just so that it's familiar and not a complete deviation from what the norm might be. Although, feel free to innovate. If you've got a better way to do something, by all means, do that. I hope this process has helped you out. This is kind of the 7-step process I go through every time I create an adventure. It helps me stay organized. It helps focus my process. And as you'll notice, I start high and then work my way low to the final level of detail. Again, it's all about what you want at your table and what you need to consume during gameplay. So stay organized, be thorough, but only to the level that you need at the table. Meanwhile, I hope this helps you out. Have fun, stay cool, and keep your dice rolling.